We have to use curiosity like a muscle, and we think that you can operationalize curiosity to be a tool for how you listen and how you speak.
And you start thinking, I wonder what really might be happening for that person in front of me and how I might be a bridge to them as opposed to pull away from them.
Why knowledge matters. Welcome, I'm Yannick, your host, and now joining me, Jennifer Edwards and Katie McCleary, to discuss their book, Bridge the Gap. What a timely book, and I'm so fortunate to have both of you now on the show because you're truly not just bridge builder but also game changer, truly. So really fascinating, incredible book. Bridge the Gap, breakthrough communication tools to transform work relationships from challenging to collaborative. Thank you so much for joining me, both of you. Such a blessing to have you.
Thank you. Thank you for having us. This is exciting, and it's exciting times to do this work.
Yeah, indeed it is. And meaningful that you reached out given how many phenomenal people you've had. And just thanks for your passion and being curious to continue learning all the time.
Well, and you are truly part of these extraordinary people, which I truly believe. But before we start, I want to know, I know it might be a Hercules task, but who is Jennifer Edwards and Katie McCleary in just one sentence?
We are two women who are passionate about relationships, and we believe that equipping people with emotional intelligence and actionable ways to have great conversations matter.
Wonderful. And now, Jennifer, it's your turn. But actually, I love that you actually describe both of you. But now I also want to know you personally. So, who are you, Miss Clearly, in one sentence? And then also Jennifer, please. Jennifer Edwards.
I am a creative and conscious strategist who really loves people and wants to see them thrive.
I love that, Katie. I'm a door opener who helps people find things they never knew out about themselves and achieve them.
That's beautiful. And as much and as wonderful your book is, I also truly find wonderful your story. And before we dive into the book, let's talk about your story, how you two met and how everything ultimately unfolded. Let's start with Miss Edwards and then we will switch to Miss McCleary.
Well, Yannick, it starts out with us not even wanting to get to know each other. We were actually introduced, and it was a stormy night, and both of us were like, what can we do to get out of having a glass of wine together? We had enough friends, and we're like, I'm not sure I really want to meet this person. And Katie, we walked into the door of this wine bar, both with a bit of trepidation, and in the end, found out that, wow, it was the biggest miracle we could have created, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that what's important to know is that we were both prejudging each other based off our labels. And this friend just kept saying, get to know her to both of us. And so when we sat down and had that glass of wine, which we both committed to doing, I would say within about 3 to 4 minutes, we knew that we were with the right person. And that even though that other person was really different than us, we could definitely find ways to be friends. And so I'm glad we listened to our friend and not our gut.
Yeah.
And it's so wonderful because today, really, in this polarized world, a Democrat and a Republican is always like cat and mouse, right? But you truly bridge the gap between one another. And one thing also people have to know, usually if you don't live in the United States, people have a tendency that's normal because you think like, well, you can kind of talk
Yeah.
badly about the US because it's the big guy, right? but everything that happens in the US ultimately spills over, right? In Canada,
Yes.
in Europe, everywhere, right? And so obviously everything that happens is, it's also an adversity, of course, but ultimately it's also an opportunity, and that's why it's so beautiful, and what you truly showed us, that
Yeah.
it is possible, and ultimately you gave birth to such a wonderful book. And so, but let's first also talk a little bit about your common denominators. What
Mhm.
is something that you discovered that you never thought you will discover from each other, Miss Cleary?
Yeah. So Jennifer is super, super smart. And I'm going to say that I'm super smart too. And when you get two smart, bold personalities in a room, competition can happen. And so we made a really intentional choice to be iron sharpens iron. And Jennifer, you have a great saying about a coin. And I really do think how we found our common denominators.
Yes, we actually believe that we represent two sides of a coin. And in America, it's a heads and tail representation. But Yannick, as you know, how much actually separates the coin? Millimeters. And it's really how we found out that we actually were more in common than we ever knew. Our values were the same: opportunities for all, scholastically. We wanted people to have health care. We believed in entrepreneurship. We believed in freedom. And we believed that each person has a right to have life and have dignity in their life, is what I mean. And you know what? We just found out we were going about it in different ways, and that the gap we were looking to bridge was bridgeable.
Mhm. And so often in America, we're just focused on differences. But when
Mhm.
you get to that end game, we all want the same thing.
We do.
It's beautiful, and that's also why the U.S. everything that really comes out the U.S. is just so astonishing, right? Because it's like the friction that somehow creates something new, right? It's what engages us, and truly what you displayed, becoming creative, curious, right? And that's wonderful.
We have to remember our shared purpose. And in America, we have to keep remembering our shared purpose because polarization is going to tear us apart.
Yes, it is.
It's so important. I think everything we have in the Western world is just unbelievably, uh, you know, beautiful, in
Mhm.
terms of opportunities we have. Of course, it can vary, but if you look at the small wins, if you look at what we actually have, with an abundance mindset, not with a luck mindset, then truly, and that's why always the US has always been a role model and still is, in so many ways, and so that's why it's not just for people in the US, but it's also important for other people, outside the US, what it actually, can give to us. But now just a short and quick question is, what brought you, generally speaking, to entrepreneurship and business? You advise businesses, Fortune 500 companies. You are yourself an entrepreneur. Katie McCleary, Jennifer Edwards. You consult, and you are also part of a venture capital firm. So, what brought you in the first place in entrepreneurship and business?
Go
Well,
ahead,
we
Jen.
like okay, you want me to take it? Okay. So we like to think of the fact that business, it's actually a lot like a game. We're actually all playing a game. And in a game, our goal as entrepreneurs and leaders is to bring our best, highest selves to the work. And so when Katie and I entered entrepreneurship from very different paths, Katie in a nonprofit path, making an enormous difference in literacy across the region and the nation, and me much more from a business, traditional business side, we found each other and realized that the one thing we knew that would elevate business leaders and create more prosperity, less suffering in the world is if we could teach people how to equip what we call their human suit, this thing that we can't zip on and off. If they could equip their human suit with greater curiosity, greater emotional intelligence, and a stronger ability to collaborate meaningfully. And so that's what brought us each individually and then together. Katie, wouldn't you agree? To want to do this business venture and make an impact.
I think we live at the intersection of prosperity and purpose. And that is one
Mm-hmm.
of the best things about being in America, right? We have a ton of opportunities in which to achieve and pursue happiness. It is written into our doctrine. Well, happiness is not just about making as much money as possible and buying a dream house. Happiness is about purpose. And purpose for us as social creatures comes from connection, communication, collaboration, shared purpose. And so we have all these businesses, schools, nonprofit, social B corps. We're all trying to just make a better life for ourselves. And it all starts with communication and collaboration. And so we decided to start the business from that mentality. And I think it's worked really well.
It's beautiful because it's so true, right? Whatever you talk, it's all ingrained in our social relationships, right? And so if you get them right, if you start actually applying the tools that you propose, and you start striving, right? Everything becomes an opportunity instead of kind of a really a headache, right? Because oftentimes, the hardest thing for people is going to the job, and there's always conflict,
Yeah.
always misunderstanding. It's so hard, even small things, right? It really screws your work relationship completely up, right? And your quality of life, because you bring it home, right? You can't leave it there. That's the thing. It's everything is integrated, even though we're talking about life balance, but it's really somehow integrated. And it's what you're doing. Obviously, I can tell, I can feel you're truly living the purpose what you're doing, right? Because that's not just a business, but as you say, it's actually a game, right? It's actually life, business of life, because it's about creating and cultivating relationships, connections, right? That makes us truly human. Beautiful. So let's dive specifically into the book. And just to give us some context, let's start with the beautiful story of Amy.
Katie, why
Yeah.
don't you go?
So your biology and your psychology, so your mind and your brain, are working in concert together to create your human experience. And we have this little cluster of cells way in the back of our brain called the amygdala. It's talked about a lot, and it's responsible for your survival, for flight, fight, freeze, all the things that we do when we feel under pressure. We have shortened the amygdala as Amy, and we personified her as an frenemy. Amy is always riding shotgun on your shoulder, scanning the environment to say, am I safe? Am I valuable? Am I understood? Am I accepted? It's not just about a bear coming out of the woods and trying to eat you. It's about your identity. She's keeping that safe too. So we have to contend with Amy, this like powerful impact player and invisible force that shapes how we confront the world. And in particular, how we work through issues of identity, communication with someone who is very different than us, who has a different way of thinking, being, and doing.
Yeah, it's so important just to know, the fact that, hey, there is something in our brain that really has a huge impact on us. And so we can actually, based on what you're presenting, ha- holding it in check to some extent, so we can still function reasonably, right? You're talking about the prefrontal lobe and just the reasoning and the optimism, so that you can actually connect, right, with one another. And so that is so crucial.
Yannick, thank you for mentioning that, because one of the gifts people have said that the book has created for them is they didn't feel so different, so alone, so odd. It was a big awareness for a lot of people that, oh my goodness, I have a cluster of cells sending a chemical cocktail that's kind of at times mucking up my thinking, diminishing my creativity and collaborative skills, that's making my words go sideways. And so the book, especially in the first part, is really meant to normalize and help us all understand what we're up against so we can make really intentional choices about how we show up and bring those skills forward.
Amy's going to make you defensive. And if
Yep.
you want to have any shot at collaboration and communication with a person who's different than you have to lower your defenses, which means you have to be aware of Amy because she's running the show and you need to run the show.
It's beautiful. And you really dive into so many aspects. So let's really go a little bit more deep into the 4 C's, why it is so important and why you have to show up in a certain manner in order to
Yeah.
make your work relationship, effective and constructive.
Mm-hmm. Go for it, Jennifer.
Okay, well, we have 4 C's that we're passionate about, and they're all intentional choices that we bring to have more collaboration, greater emotional intelligence, and really conversations that can relieve pressure and create connection. So the 4 words we like to bring are clean, curious, collaborative, and care. Katie, why don't you take the first 2, clean and curious, and I'll take collaborative and care.
Okay, sounds good. So, one of the phrases that's throughout the book and in everything that we teach and speak about is how you show up matters. You can only control your own response, energy, reaction. You can't control what that other person is going to do or say. So, we want you to show up in the best optimal conditions to be able to connect and collaborate. So, you got to show up clean. And what we mean by clean is Amy is not gunking and mucking you up. You're not showing up so emotionally charged that you can't get yourself under control. So show up clean. Because when we show up clean, we downregulate all that stuff that's making us go crazy, and our words become more responsible. Step 2, we want you to show up curious. We're all wired for curiosity. Think about toddlers that explore their world. The research shows that after the age of 25, our curiosity about others and other perceptions in the world plummet. So we have to use curiosity like a muscle. And we think that you can operationalize curiosity to be a tool for how you listen and how you speak. And most people will say, well, I'm a really curious person. I ask a lot of questions. It's not about that. Curiosity is an energy. It means that I'm willing to suspend myself, my thinking, and be quiet and present internally and externally to be curious about another person's perspective. Those are the first 2 C's, clean and curious.
And Katie, what you said is like clean and curious are the beginning accelerators of how we can show up and can create trust and respect with another person. And really, the third C, collaboration, is really about the power of listening and the power of what we call the invitation. And when we want to show up collaborative, one of the most powerful questions we can ever ask another person is, Yannick, how can I show up for you? How can I partner with you? How can I move from me and my ego to we and what's possible? So the book talks a lot about specifically collaboration is an energy and it's also a skill to bring. And finally, our fourth C is this word care. Care is the glue of any relationship. And we like to say it's like a pair of glasses through which you choose to see the world. It's what you put your attention on. And if you put your attention on care, the judgment that's poisonous really stops. And you start thinking, I wonder what really might be happening for that person in front of me and how I might be a bridge to them as opposed to pull away from them.
Yeah.
That is beautiful and it's so critical. But just quickly, one thing I want to know in terms of the book and your collaboration. When and how was it like, yes, you know what? We gotta write the book together. Because let's face it, a project together, even just 2 people, it's really difficult. It's
Mm-hmm.
really, really difficult. It's outstanding that you actually could do it. So let's just quickly walk us through the process from each perspective, how this unfolded and also how long actually it took.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I'll start, Katie. So we spent the first 6 to 8 months dancing around each other, figuring out who each other was, what the character consistencies were of each other, and really wrestling with issues. We were in the middle of racial issues in America, cancel culture, polarization, fractionalization, an argument about masks and vaccines. And we watched how and if we could have conversations with high respect, even if we had different perspectives. And then how willing we were to listen to another's truth to understand their perspective. And so I'll start with just that, Katie. You can finish, but that's how we started. We started by truthfully testing with truthful conversations and stretching and scratching each other's brains.
So Jennifer and I have both read a lot of thought leadership books and a lot of leadership books, and that helps right off the bat. Um, what we saw missing was actually equipping people with how to listen better, how to express better curiosity. What are the things that I need to do, the frameworks in order to have better conversations? A lot of things out there are very abstract and esoteric. They'll tell you why you should listen, why you should go have that tough conversation, but there's not sentence starters, conversation frameworks of how a conversation moves through emotions. How do
Mhm.
I express emotional intelligence? So we wanted our book to be different and tangible with a tool. So every time when we were writing this book, which is a huge collaborative project, it is painstakingly hard
Yeah.
to write a book. So if you haven't written one, it's painstakingly hard. So we used every tool that we told our readers to use with each other and tested it out. And we practiced what we preach. And then we
Still
began
today.
to just put tools to it.
Yeah.
Um, People want to be told what to do. I know that sounds weird, but people want to be told what to do, especially when they're under pressure and their brain is going wacky. And they got to be able to access that in that moment. And so we wanted to give them that.
And Yannick, just because we wrote the book doesn't mean we're perfect. We use these tools
Yeah.
every day to bridge gaps between ourselves. And we use them proactively to prevent tension, prevent the splitting that might happen between us. And I think that that's something Katie and I have talked a lot about, is that you don't learn in your childhood, you don't learn around a kitchen table, and you don't learn in your schooling. And so these are really tools that, once put in your mind, and if you focus on them, grow and expand and change the way you see the world and therefore your relationships.
I mean, I can't agree more. And what I learned so many important tools because I thought like, well, the way I ask people question in order to de-escalate situation is like, but I started really doing very differently because of your book. It's such a, small things like, or tell me instead of what makes you think, or or with these why questions, right? And it just changes the whole game. And one another is so important. I was always, and I feel like, wow, I was such a poor communicator actually. But reading your book, I I just like, wow, that really works. So usually you always say, well, I'm doing good. However, or but, but now you just say, well, I'm doing good, and I'm feeling a little bit pissed off because so that's really, even though like it sounds like a contradiction, but it's not, right? Because in life we have to deal with so many things. It's like where we pay attention to, right? And it's still you're truthful to yourself and also to the other, to open this up. It's so wonderful. So how do you do it? How did you change it? And what do you actually do to show up, clean and caring? Because as in everything, what I, for example, do to get better at what you are telling me is I'm very strict with certain things, like for example fitness and so on, right? So because it gives me a balance, so I get an edge, because as you said, it's not easy to actually apply it.
So we have a couple things. If there is negative energy that either of us feel between each other, we go and have a conversation within 24 hours. And the sentence starter is this: I felt something between us the other day. Could we talk about it? And if there is energy between us, could we clean it up? If you let it fester, you build stories about it, breakdowns are going to get worse and drama is going to happen. So that's one rule. You are also speaking to another rule that we practice pretty religiously, which is and over but. Very rarely do you need to say the word but. It's almost always an and. And it changes the dynamic between collaboration and also a disagreement between two people. So when you use and instead of but, you're saying two things can be true at the same time. I'm including your opinion. I'm including how two emotions feel at the same time. And it just opens it up for more possibility. What are some other things we do, Jennifer?
We do another thing, and that is we offer each other a ton of grace when we're exhausted and don't make up stories about each other. And we have a sentence we'll say to each other. We'll say, "Hey, my exhaustion or I've is high, or I've run out of words today and I need to hit pause. Can we pick this up tomorrow?" And we're really clear that that's because we're asking our brain to show up optimally and to not show up reactively. So we call it out all the time. And one other thing we're really committed to doing is to honoring the way each of us process information. Katie processes information more in story. I process information more in very linear ways. So we take time to hear how each of us need to process information, and it gives us a more full, rich tapestry to work off of.
Mm-hmm.
And what do you do as a daily routine in order to actually keep this up? Because I know you both, Miss Edwards, you have 3 children, and Miss Clary, you have 2 children. So you're very busy. What do you do besides obviously applying your incredible book?
We pretty have a strong morning routine, and they're very different routines. I'm up at 5. The trainer is here at 5:30, and I'm working on high intensity lifting. And I walk 20,000 steps a day is my goal, 5 days a week. So I'm pretty clear, and those 20,000 steps are either about quiet or about learning, because my mind in the work needs to be present, fresh, and very, very clean. So I'm careful about that.
I get up in the morning and I want a full hour and a half to 2 hours before my first meeting. So I also write for 7 minutes in the morning. 7 minutes, I write about anything, anything that bubbles up. I feel like it's a clearing out, and it helps me just understand what's going on with me internally. I also meditate. I do a lot of bird watching as my form of meditation. So I'm trying to protect brain space, because when I start to stack up everything that is on top of me for the day, everything
Yeah.
that has to be accomplished for my kids and my family, the stress starts to hijack me. And then Amy is in action and I want to pull away. So protecting my brain space is utterly crucial to keeping me on track. And then I think between the two of us, we check in a lot during the day. And they're tiny little notes. Not everything requires an hour-long conversation. It's dropping a line, a text here or there. And if we don't have anything together for that day, it's also just checking in with each other. Hey, thinking about you, gorgeous. Have a wonderful morning. Let me know how I can help. It's those little things that keep us also connected in our really busy world.
That's the care.
Yeah.
Care is the glue. And then I'm going to add one small silly thing, Yannick. We both are committed to sleep.
Yeah.
We really are committed to sleep, water, and we're both really great eaters. And so those things matter. Our body is needs to be fueled and fueled for optimal performance, both for ourselves, for our partners, our children, and for our clients. So it matters.
It's so important because nothing comes without a price. And I think that's also important. I think if you are outstanding and that I clearly, truly find that you are truly outstanding, that's the work, right? That we usually don't see. And that's is so important for the audience, for everything in the world, right? That people, whether you're in business or not, if you really want to be a trailblazer, then you have to put your work in and you have to make sure that your temple, you really care
Yep,
about your temple, and it's
very much.
beautiful. I love the way you approach everything, so it truly makes sense. You're true bridge builder. Now there's also a saying that standing in the middle of the road is actually much more dangerous than taking a side.
Mm,
Mm. Do you have the finger trap?
I do.
You want to show that? I think let's use that. It's a great metaphor.
So when you're forced to take a side, label yourself, and we can find great meaning and purpose in labeling ourselves too. When we're met with an idea, a person, a project, just something that rubs us the wrong way, you feel that tension in your body. And the natural human reaction is to pull away. So let's say that you're in this finger trap and you feel something's not right. I don't understand that. I don't want to do that. That's a lot. You'll pull away. That's it. You'll take a side and you'll find an excuse, a story, and evidence to do that. But how do I get out of the trap, Jennifer?
The only way to get out of the track is to get to the middle of that road. And it means to lean in, to be curious, to suspend your existing perspective. And I love the verb to travel to another person's perspective. And once you travel there and you get to that middle of the road, you might find that you can build a bridge. Maybe not in the way you thought, but there are bridges that are able to be built if you stick in it long enough.
That is beautiful. Wow. And
I could
I
say this too.
truly,
The world wants us to be polarized, Yannick. It's
Yeah.
easier to sell stories. It's easier to sell products. It's easier to say you belong to this brand, this tribe, this identity, this label. Like the noise of the world doesn't want us to stand in the middle. And that's certainly true in politics right now. But there are so many more of us in the middle than on the fringes. There's so many more of us in the middle than on the fringes that we're not alone. And it's not that dangerous. It's just that our voice is getting lost in it. And that's what we really have to focus on is the middle voice, the third way emerging in a noise machine that doesn't want to hear it.
Yeah, think of the American election right now, Yannick. You look at the Republicans and the Democrats, and um, in the middle is that lost center that would die to have another opportunity, another choice. But the two ends will make the choice. The middle won't.
yeah, it's so true. And of course, but sometimes when you just listen to a clip or whatever, it is, and the Americans have always been the best in entertainment, right? It's unbelievable, to listen to whoever it is. Like, for example, even Donald Trump, he's just such an incredible narrator, right? It's
Mhm. Yeah.
incredible. So, and it is obviously people are busy, right? People, they work hard for their family and providing, and at the end they want to relax and watch some TV, and then you have this polarization. Obviously it's not easy, but it gives me a lot of hope. And I think the only thing that really moves us forward is having like people like you who give us hope and show us the way. And truly, I'm very, very positive in all that. Of course we have to watch out. Coffee or tea? Very
Four,
important
cup,
question.
4 cups of coffee a day.
And you drink a lot of iced tea.
Oh, I do drink a lot of iced tea after 12 o'clock.
Yeah, you do. You drink black iced tea. I
Yeah.
drink coffee all day long into the night. My father only drank black coffee. He never drank water, milk, anything. So I come from that breed of stock. It does not keep me up at night. I drink coffee all day long.
I do.
That is unbelievable. And you know what I find so beautiful is that it seems that you two are almost like best friends, you know?
Hmm.
So it really
Yeah.
it's amazing to see that, you know, there is such this incredible synergy. It goes way beyond, you know, business, you know?
We call ourselves work wives. This is a marriage. This is like if you're going to open up a business with someone and write a book and take stages and travel and grind as hard as we do, like you better be in it. Like be intentional about that. And so, and I'm not going to paint a rosy picture. Like we are very different, and we have breakdowns. But we're in a marriage. Like we care about each other.
I'd say there's one thing, Yannick, we have kept that we are blessed to not have in our relationship, and that's jealousy or
Yeah.
envy, or it's really been remarkable. And maybe it's because we communicate so much and are so honest. We are truly encouragers of each other. And I want the utmost best for Katie's um, and what her true deepest calling is. And she wants the same for me. And there's nothing she wouldn't do for me and I for her. And it is a choice. And it's an easy choice now because we've built such trust and respect.
Yeah. Without trust and respect, this would not be possible.
No.
I mean, this is true. It's almost, it really, it is an American story, really, that what you're telling me. It's just so beautiful, you know, and I find this is, it's truly inspiring, you know, and yeah, it's very touching. I love that. That's so beautiful. And yeah, wow, I'm so happy for you because to see that and also to just see, and it's also important for other people in general, like marriage or whatever it is. Love is hard work, right? It is. I mean, imagine, I can't imagine, but it takes work. I mean, you know, you have kids, you have I guess still a husband, or a partner, so it takes work.
Yeah.
Well, and I also want to add that, like, generationally, Katie and I are 15 years apart. She is married and she has a partner and is raising children. And I'm married to a man that's 65. And, you know, we see the world a little bit philosophically different than Katie and Nick do. So it's been really powerful, even in that layer, to understand that when you're born and how generations inform understanding of leadership and the why, what's, and hows of, you know, contribution and collaboration. It's been an enormous blessing for us to have that difference exist as well, because we understand a broader spectrum of the
Mhm.
society and of the people we're speaking with.
Absolutely.
And especially too, I mean, today with all this ageism, you know, it's so problematic, right? Because what really makes us so much stronger if you learn from younger, but especially also older, because experience, let's face it, experience makes a difference, right? And
Yeah.
so this synergy that you have, you know, different generation, how you collaborate, and the fact that you get so well along is again is another example of what is so lacking in this world too, because there's more and more this gap between generations, or
Yeah.
yeah, they screwed up our futures, and you know, and so on, and that is not helpful, that's not constructive, it's actually very dangerous. So it's really really beautiful to see that your relationship, and that's also a fact, you called yourself a work wife. Was it a challenge at some point in terms of your other relationship with your spouse or partner?
No, it hasn't been, but I think that this goes to the generation thing is that it's not just about the age difference between us or the philosophical difference, it's a contextual difference.
Yeah.
So, I love Marty and Jennifer. Do I agree with some of the ways in which they look at the world? No, but when I choose to look at the context from which they have those ideas or lived experiences. I mean, there's stuff that Marty knows that I do not know. But when Marty reaches across the aisle and, gets closer in that finger trap if we're even in one, and he looks at my context as a younger person that has certain worries, fears, and concerns that maybe contextually he didn't have to deal with. That's where we can really find common ground. And so I think that both Jennifer and I are really blessed that we have two partners who are thinking lovingly about the context in which we're all just trying to operate and live our lives. It's when we don't understand that context that I think jealousy arises, misunderstanding arises, and they might get threatened. They've never been threatened. Mm-mm. So we're really blessed in that way. But I do know people who have jealous, close partners who just they can't handle that level of intimacy with anyone else in their life.
We also have partners who have done a significant amount of personal
Yes.
development
Yeah.
and who are committed to having super intentional lives and intentional marriages and partnerships. And so, we with our partners are always in a conversation of intentional attention. What we put our attention on will grow. And so, I'd say we work the tools in our personal relationships
Yeah, we
and
do.
professional relationships, and that changes everything.
Yeah.
What holds people back mostly to apply your tools and strategies presented in the book?
A lack of self-awareness. Many of us, we talk about our boiled frogs. We're in the pressure cooker of life. We don't even know we're in the pressure cooker. That's just life, man. I am who I am. I can't change. I'm not the problem. They don't have self awareness about Amy, about the stories that are hardwired in their mind, in their limbic system. So, self awareness. What about for you, Jennifer?
Sometimes I feel like it's easier to sleepwalk through life as opposed to be very awake. And to be very awake means I have to be very clear that my attention needs to be on kindness, on being clean, on being curious, and on and over but, we over me, and to be still and present to whom I'm with. Those are not skills, as I said earlier, that we are taught, as children or in our schools or rarely around the table. So that's what holds us back is even just the awareness and then the decision to take responsibility to be awake.
Where should we start?
Yeah. Um, so I find myself falling asleep all the time. And it's a practice. It's how fast can I interrupt my pattern of jumping as opposed to being, to responding as opposed to reacting. And so it's truthfully about surrounding yourself with people who hold you capable to greater behavior, greater emotional intelligence, greater partnership, greater communication. And one thing I love about Katie is that should I and when I do fall short of that agreement we have, she doesn't hesitate to say with love and care, "Hey, Jennifer, would you like to reconsider that?" Katie, where would you say people fall short?
Well, I think one thing to do to grow like self awareness and is to just be really honest with yourself about what you want the outcome to be.
Yeah.
And I think that you have to have somewhat of a heart for a greater shared outcome rather than your agenda driven outcome. So, at some level, humans, they need to have the foresight and be able to travel to the future to have vision about what's a great outcome for all, or for at least the context in which I'm in. And then work backwards from there about how you're showing up in it. I mean, if I want to have an amazing relationship with my teenager and I want her to get good grades and I want her to go to college and I want her to be a responsible driver and choose great friends, what is my strategy for doing that? How am I showing up with her so that she can hear and listen to me? And so, in moments when she struggles, I struggle, I have to think about that first and then say, oh, my language, my listening, my energy, how I connect to her is valuable and strategic rather than just like getting on her butt because that doesn't work. It's thinking that strategically through things. That's the kind of self-awareness I'm talking about, because we all know that there's a bunch of jerks out there that'll say that they're the most self-aware people in the world. It's like, no, you're smug and you're egotistical. it's 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 about having distance from yourself to say, how do I want to show up?
What's the number one tool, your favorite tool?
My favorite tool is using the question that opens the prefrontal cortex, and it's asking a question, tell me about, zipping my lips and letting that person share and have an experience of truly being heard.
My favorite tool is that anytime I'm going to go into a meeting or an interaction, I take a pause for a second and I ask myself how I want to show up and what is the best outcome for this interaction, and knowing that that's the energy I'm going to show up with and being very intentional about it. It's a 30-second pause, but when you practice it over and over and over again, you show up more consistently and you can build better trust and respect that way.
What makes you feel alive?
Golf. And here's why. Golf is this interesting metaphor. You're out walking, you're on your own, every lie is different. Every time the weather changes, the entire shot is different. And it's all about mastering both the art and the science of your swing. And the swing is a metaphor for how am I going to show up right now?
Brilliant.
It makes me feel alive.
Um, I mentioned bird watching before. It goes deeper than that for me. Like, I'm incredibly invested in understanding animal consciousness and communication, and answering this question about whether or not animals are as intelligent or sentient as we are as humans. So while we spend, me and Jennifer, all day long talking about human behavior, emotions, and consciousness, I think that there's so much to learn from humans or from animals. So, yeah, when I'm watching funny cat videos, funny dog videos, I'm also reading books about birds and animal behavior and loving them. And I love this insight into the natural world that I think can actually make us more human.
It's beautiful. Actually, I love both. Me too. I love golf because it's really a game against yourself, right? It's
Mm.
really a mental game, right? And just watching the birds and just paying attention, right? As Langer really says, like, mindfulness is really actively noticing new things, right? It's not something, sketchy. It's truly seeing new things in the old and old things in the new, right? And it is not hard. It's just being truly present, right? So beautiful. Your number one advice to live a meaningful, purposeful, and fulfilled life.
Go for it, Jennifer.
My one word is build a community. Find a community, surround yourself with amazing humans, scratch each other's brains, and be encouragers and truth tellers.
Beautiful.
Mine is to protect your brain space. That what you feed yourself mentally is what you will experience in the world.
Yeah.
So feed your mind carefully.
Beautiful. Thank you so much, Jennifer Edwards and Katie McCleary, for this true gift. Bridge the Gap. What a book, and as important, your personalities and who you are and for what you stand for. You're truly a blessing and a gift to myself and the world. And I can't wait to hear much more of both of you, because your work is clearly game changing, and it changes life. I read it in a book. Changes companies, the way they interact, people's quality of life, and just simply thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Jennifer Edwards and Katie McCleary. That's why knowledge matters. Make your life a masterpiece. Visit now programs.the-ykm.com.